Lisa Martinez stood at the edge of the massive waiting room, her violin case clutched tight in her sweaty hands. Through the huge windows, she could see the stars spinning slowly around Kepler Station. The space station was bigger than any city she had ever seen, built like a giant wheel that turned to make fake gravity. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its outer ring, bringing alien visitors from across the galaxy. She had been waiting for 3 hours now. The other humans in the room looked just as nervous as she felt. There was an opera singer from Europa, a painter from the moon colonies, and a dancer from Earth's African Federation. All of them had come here for the same reason, to prove that humans could create art that mattered to the rest of the galaxy. The waiting room itself was a work of art. The walls changed colors like a slow rainbow, and soft music played from hidden speakers. The music was alien, full of sounds that made her think of crystal chimes and wind through metal trees. It was beautiful, but it made her feel small. How could her simple violin compete with music like this? Lisa touched the locket around her neck. Inside was a tiny photo of her grandmother, Elena, who had taught her to play violin when she was just 5 years old. Grandma Elena had been born on Earth, back when humans were still learning how to live in space. She had smuggled her violin to Mars Colony 7 when she was just 18, one of the first musicians to bring Earth's music to the Red Planet. Music is the language of the heart, Grandma Elena used to say. It doesn't matter if people understand your words. If you play with your heart, they will understand your soul. Lisa hoped that was true. She was about to play for beings that didn't even have hearts like humans did. A soft chime echoed through the room. A voice spoke in perfect English, though. Lisa knew it was being translated from some alien language. Lisa Martinez, please report to Testing Chamber 7. Her legs felt weak as she stood up. The other humans gave her encouraging smiles, but she could see the worry in their eyes. They all knew what this meant. If the humans failed these tests, it would be another 100 years before they got another chance. The Galactic Cultural Exchange Council only met once every century, and they had already rejected humanity twice. The corridor to the testing chamber was long and curved, following the shape of the station's wheel. Lisa passed windows that showed the galaxy stretching out in all directions. Somewhere out there were worlds where beings made music with their minds, where art was painted with light itself, where stories were told through the dance of atoms. What could a human with a wooden violin possibly offer to beings like that? She reached the testing chamber, and the door slid open with a whisper. The room beyond took her breath away. It was shaped like a giant sphere, with her small platform in the center. Around her, rising up in all directions, were seats filled with the strangest collection of beings she had ever seen. There were the Zephyrians, who looked like giant praying mantises made of blue crystal. They clicked their mandibles together. In what she had learned was their way of talking. Next to them sat the Violin, who looked almost like humans, except they were tall and thin as pencils, with skin that glowed soft silver. Their large eyes never blinked as they watched her. The Calorians were the most impressive. They were huge, each one the size of a small building, with rainbow-colored wings that folded around them like cloaks. Their council master was the biggest of all, with golden wings that seemed to catch light from nowhere and throw it back in beautiful patterns. But strangest of all were the Altarians. Lisa had heard about them, but never seen one. They didn't have bodies like other beings. Instead, they were clouds of tiny lights that moved together like a swarm of fireflies. The lights pulsed and changed color as they communicated with each other in patterns too fast for human eyes to follow. Human candidate Lisa Martinez, the council master's voice boomed through the chamber. Each word was like a musical note, rich and deep. You stand before the Galactic Cultural Exchange Council to prove your species worthy of recognition as a culturally advanced civilization. Lisa nodded, not trusting her voice to work properly. You will perform 3 pieces, the Council Master continued. First, a composition from your own species. Second, a standard piece from the galactic repertoire. Third, an improvised fusion that demonstrates your ability to blend human and alien musical traditions. The council master's wings rustled, and the sound was like wind through autumn leaves. Be aware, human, that thousands of species have attempted these tests. Most fail at the second piece. None have ever succeeded at the third. Lisa felt her heart beating so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. She opened her violin case with shaking hands. The instrument inside was old, made of wood that had grown on Earth more than 200 years ago. It had been her grandmother's and her great-grandmother's before that. The wood was dark with age, and the strings were new, but the sound it made was warm and sweet. She lifted the violin to her shoulder and closed her eyes. For a moment, she wasn't on a space station surrounded by alien judges. She was 7 years old again, in the small music room of their apartment on Mars. Grandma Elena was sitting beside her, her wrinkled hands guiding Lisa's small fingers to the right positions on the strings. "Don't think about the notes," Grandma Elena whispered in her memory. "Think about the story you want to tell." Lisa opened her eyes and looked around the chamber. The alien beings were watching her with expressions she couldn't read. Some seemed curious, others looked bored. A few seemed almost annoyed, as if they had already decided she would fail. She raised her bow and took a deep breath. The first piece she had chosen was Bach's Partita No. 2 in D minor. It was one of the most difficult pieces ever written for violin, full of complex harmonies and lightning fast passages. But more than that, it was pure human emotion turned into sound. It spoke of struggle and triumph, a beauty found in the midst of suffering. The first note rang out clear and true, echoing through the perfect acoustics of the chamber. Lisa forgot about the alien judges, forgot about the importance of the test, forgot about everything except the music flowing through her fingers. She played with all the skill her grandmother had taught her, with all the love her family had given her, with all the hope of humanity reaching out to touch the stars. The music filled the chamber like sunlight, warm and golden and alive. The last note of Bach's Partita hung in the air like a bird refusing to land. Lisa lowered her violin slowly, her heart still racing from the intensity of the performance. She had played the piece perfectly, every note exactly where it should be, every emotion flowing through the music like water through a riverbed dot. The silence in the chamber stretched on and on. Lisa looked around at the alien faces, trying to read their expressions. The Villani were leaning forward in their seats, their silver skin glowing brighter than before. The crystal Zephyrians had stopped clicking their mandibles together, which Lisa hoped was a good sign. Even the cloud of lights that made up the Altarians seemed to be pulsing more slowly, as if they were thinking deeply about what they had just heard. Finally, the council master spoke. His golden wings shifted, catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns across the chamber walls. "Interesting," he said, and his voice was softer than before. "Your species shows technical ability that we did not expect. The mathematical precision of your Bach composer is impressive." Lisa felt a flutter of hope in her chest, but she tried not to show it. This was only the first test. The real challenge was still coming. One of the Zephyrians spoke up, their voice like the sound of wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "The human demonstrates skill, yes, but skill alone does not make art. Any machine can play notes in the correct order. We need to see if she can truly understand music that was not created by her own kind." The council master nodded, his massive head moving like a mountain shifting. "Indeed. Human candidate, you will now attempt the second test. You must perform a piece from our galactic standard repertoire, but not just any piece." His wings rustled with what Lisa was beginning to recognize as amusement. "You will perform Quantum Resonance in D minor by the great Altarian composer Zixtala." Lisa felt her blood turn cold. She had studied this piece for months, practicing until her fingers bled and her arms ached. It was considered one of the most difficult compositions in the known galaxy. The music existed in multiple states at once, like the quantum particles that inspired it. The performer had to play notes that were both there and not there, creating harmonies that existed only in the spaces between certainties. But the real challenge wasn't technical. The piece required the performer to understand quantum consciousness, the ability to think in contradictions, to hold opposing ideas in mind at the same time. Most species could only approach this through advanced technology. The Altarians themselves used complex machines to help them maintain the quantum states necessary for the music. Humans had no such technology. Lisa would have to do it all with. Her mind and her heart dotting Altarian moved forward, their cloud of lights swirling in complex patterns. When they spoke, their voice sounded like a whisper made of starlight. This piece has never been successfully performed by any species other than our own. The quantum mathematics are too complex for most minds to grasp. Are you certain you wish to attempt it? Lisa gripped her violin tighter. She thought about her grandmother's words. Music is the language of the heart. Maybe that was exactly what she needed. Maybe thinking wasn't the answer. Maybe she needed to feel her way through the quantum maze. Yes, she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. I'll try. The council master gestured with one wing, and suddenly the chamber filled with a soft humming sound. The walls began to glow with strange symbols that seemed to move and shift like living things. Lisa recognized them as quantum notation, a way of writing music that showed all the possible states each note could exist in. She studied the symbols floating in the air around her. Where normal sheet music showed definite notes, this showed clouds of possibility. Each note existed in a range of frequencies until it was actually played, at which point it would collapse into a single definite sound. But the performer had to somehow know which possibility to choose in each moment, and the choice had to feel right on an emotional level, not just a mathematical one dot. It was like trying to paint a picture with colors that didn't exist yet. Lisa closed her eyes and raised her violin. She had to forget everything she knew about normal music. She had to stop thinking about notes and start thinking about feelings. The quantum piece wasn't really about sound at all. It was about the emotions that existed in the spaces between thoughts, the feelings that couldn't be put into words. She placed her bow on the strings and played the first note. But instead of playing it as a single definite sound, she let her mind relax and played it as a question. The note hung in the air, shimmering between different possibilities. Lisa felt rather than heard which possibility was correct, and the note settled into place like a key finding its lock. The second note was harder. It had to exist in harmony with the first, but also in contradiction to it. Lisa thought about how she could love her home on Mars while also longing for Earth, how she could be proud of humanity while also knowing they had so much to learn. She played the contradiction, and somehow the violin sang both feelings at once. As she continued, something amazing began to happen. The chamber itself started to respond to her music. The quantum symbols on the walls began to pulse in rhythm. With her playing, the other aliens in the audience were moving in their seats, not dancing exactly, but swaying as if the music was a physical force they could feel. But most incredible of all, Lisa began to see the music as well as hear it. Lines of light appeared in the air around her, connecting each note to the next in patterns of impossible beauty. The quantum harmony she was creating were making the very atoms in the chamber vibrate in sympathy. She realized that the Altarians hadn't created this piece to show off their technology. They had created it to express something that could only be felt, not understood. It was music about the mystery of existence itself, about how things could be both true and false at the same time, about how beauty could exist in uncertainty. And somehow, her human brain was perfect for this kind of thinking. Humans live their whole lives holding contradictory emotions. They could be happy and sad at the same time, could love something and fear it, could hope for the future while mourning the past. What the Altarians needed complex machines to achieve, humans did naturally every day. The piece built to its climax, and Lisa felt herself becoming part of the music. She wasn't just playing notes anymore. She was channeling pure emotion through the violin, letting feelings become sound without the barrier of conscious thought. The final chord rang out like the birth of a new star, bright and impossible and perfect. When the music ended, the silence was different than before. It wasn't empty. It was full of potential, like the moment before dawn when anything might happen. Lisa opened her eyes and saw that every being in the chamber was staring at her, with expressions of complete amazement. The council master's wings were spread wide, trembling slightly. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Impossible?" he said. "How did you do that without any quantum enhancement technology?" Lisa stood in the center of the chamber, her violin still raised, watching the faces of the alien judges. The council master's question hung in the air like an echo. How had she done it without quantum enhancement technology? She wasn't even sure herself. It had felt as natural as breathing. The cloud of lights that was the Altarian composer moved closer to her platform. Their voice was full of wonder and confusion. "Young human, what you just accomplished should be impossible. Our greatest masters require years of training with quantum computers to achieve what you did with simple intuition. You played our most sacred composition as if you were born understanding the mathematics of uncertainty." Lisa lowered her violin, feeling suddenly shy under all the attention. "I didn't think about the mathematics," she said honestly. "I just tried to feel what the music wanted to say." It seemed like it was about having two different feelings at the same time, and humans do that all the time. A ripple of movement went through the audience. The Zephyrians clicked their mandibles faster, which Lisa had learned meant they were excited or surprised. The Villani were whispering to each other, their silver skin flickering like candlelight. One of the Villani stood up. Her tall form graceful as a flower stem. "What do you mean? Humans feel two things at once. How is this possible?" "Our emotions are pure, singular. We feel joy or sorrow, never both together." Lisa thought about how to explain something that seemed so obvious to her. "Well, like when I left Mars to come here. I was excited about the adventure, but also sad to leave my family. Or when my grandmother died, I was heartbroken because I missed her, but also happy because I remembered all the wonderful times we had together. Those feelings weren't fighting each other. They were just part of the same truth." The aliens exchanged looks that Lisa couldn't interpret. She was beginning to realize that what seemed normal to humans might be very strange to other species. The council master folded his golden wings around himself like a cloak. "This explains much," he said slowly. "We have always wondered how your species could be so young and yet so adaptable. You face contradiction without breaking. You hold opposing truths without choosing sides." His great head tilted to study her. "Perhaps this is why you survived your violent history while remaining capable of beauty." Before Lisa could ask what he meant, another voice spoke from the back of the chamber. It was deep and rumbling, like distant thunder. A being she hadn't noticed before stepped into the light. It was huge, even bigger than the Calorians, with skin that looked like polished stone and eyes that glowed like small suns. "I am Elder Crix of the Hegemony," the being announced. "I have watched this display with great interest. The human shows unusual ability, yes, but let us not forget why we have these tests. Cultural advancement means more than performing music. It means understanding the deeper truths that art reveals about the nature of existence." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Something about Elder Crix's tone made her nervous. The other aliens had seemed surprised and impressed by her performance. This being seemed almost angry about it. Elder Crix moved closer, his footsteps shaking. The platform where Lisa stood. "Tell me, human, what do you think your little performance proves? That your species can mimic our music? That you can copy what greater civilizations have already created?" The accusation stung, but Lisa tried to keep her voice calm. "I wasn't trying to copy anything. I was trying to understand what the composer wanted to say, and then say it in my own way." "Your own way?" Elder Crix laughed, and the sound was like rocks grinding together. Child, your species has existed for barely a moment in galactic terms. You have no way of your own. You are infants playing with tools you do not understand. Lisa felt anger rising in her chest, but also something else, determination. She thought about her grandmother, who had carried her violin across space to a new world. She thought about all the human musicians who had created beauty in the darkness between stars. She thought about the songs that had comforted colonists during the hard early years on Mars and the Moon. "You're wrong," she said, and her voice was stronger now. "Humans have been making music for thousands of years. We had symphonies before we had spaceships. We had folk songs before we knew other worlds existed. Our music comes from who we are, not from copying other people." Elder Crix's eyes flared brighter. "Prove it then." The third test is improvisation. Create something new that blends human and alien traditions. Show us this unique human way you speak of. The council masters. Wings rustled nervously. "Elder Crix, perhaps we should." "No," Elder Crix cut him off. "Let the human try. Let her show us if she can create something worthy, or if she can only repeat what others have already perfected." Lisa looked around the chamber at all the alien faces watching her. Some looked encouraging, others seemed worried, and a few appeared almost hostile. She realized that this wasn't just about music anymore. This was about whether humanity deserved respect in the galaxy, or whether they would always be seen as dangerous children. She raised her violin again and closed her eyes. What could she create that would show the beauty of human creativity while honoring the musical tradition she had just learned? The answer came to her like a whisper from her grandmother's memory. She began with a simple melody, one that Elena had hummed while working in the hydroponic gardens on Mars. It was a folk tune from Earth, passed down through generations of farmers and workers, simple and pure and full of hope. But as she played, Lisa began to weave in the quantum harmonies she had learned from the Altarian piece. The simple human melody became something more complex, existing in multiple emotional states at once. The hope of the folk song carried also the sadness of leaving home, the joy of new discoveries mixed with the fear of the unknown. The tune soared and dipped like a bird riding the wind, never quite settling into one emotion before dancing into another dot. Then she added elements from the crystal-clear precision of Zephyrian music, making each note ring like a bell in perfect clarity, while still maintaining the quantum uncertainty of the Altarian style. The combination should have been impossible, but somehow it worked. The different musical traditions weren't fighting each other. They were having a conversation as Lisa played. Something extraordinary began to happen. The chamber itself started to change. The walls began to glow with soft colors that pulsed in rhythm with her music. The quantum symbols that had appeared during her second performance returned, but now they were joined by new patterns, geometric shapes that danced and flowed like living things. The aliens in the audience were leaning forward, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whispers, and light patterns that somehow harmonized with Lisa's violin. Even Elder Crix had stopped glowering and was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. But the most amazing thing was happening inside Lisa herself. As she played, she could feel connections forming between her mind and the minds of the beings around her. Not telepathy exactly, but something deeper, a sharing of pure emotion that needed no words or even thoughts. Through her music, she could feel the ancient loneliness of the Villani, who lived for thousands of years watching younger species rise and fall. She could sense the rigid perfection that the Zephyrians strive for, and how it sometimes kept them from experiencing true joy. She could touch the vast, complex thoughts of the Altarians, who understood the universe in ways that would take her a lifetime to learn, and somehow her simple human melody was reaching all of them, offering something they hadn't known they were missing: the courage to feel contradictory emotions without trying to resolve them, the strength to find beauty in uncertainty and imperfection. The music built to a crescendo that seemed to fill not just the chamber, but the entire station. Lisa felt as if she were connected to every being in the galaxy, all of them joined together in a moment of perfect understanding. Then, gently, the melody returned to its simple beginning, ending, where it had started but somehow transformed by the journey. The last note of Lisa's fusion piece faded away, but the chamber remained filled with a strange energy. The walls continued to glow with soft colors, and the air itself seemed to shimmer like heat waves rising from summer pavement. Lisa opened her eyes and gasped at what she saw. The testing chamber had transformed completely. Where before there had been cold metal walls and simple alien technology, now there were displays of light and color everywhere. Mathematical equations floated in the air like golden butterflies, and geometric patterns danced across the ceiling in rhythm with her heartbeat. Most amazing of all, she could see connections between every being in the room, threads of light that seemed to carry emotions back and forth between them. The council master rose from his seat, his massive wings spread wide in what Lisa was learning to recognize as awe. "By the ancient stars," he whispered, his voice trembling. "The precursor systems are awakening. I have not seen these displays in over 3,000 years. Dr. Amanda Foster, who had been watching from the observation deck above, pressed her face against the glass window. She was the human scientist who had helped Lisa prepare for the test, and she understood alien technology better than almost anyone. "Lisa," she called down through the communication system, "do you know what you've done? The music you just played has activated dormant systems throughout the entire station." Lisa looked around in confusion. "I don't understand. I was just playing music. How could that affect the station's computers?" One of the Altarians floated closer, their cloud of lights pulsing with excitement. "Not computers, young human. Consciousness. Interfaces. The precursors, the ancient race that built this station, created technology that responds to pure thought and emotion rather than mechanical commands. But those systems have been silent for millennia. We thought they were broken beyond repair." Elder Crick stepped forward, his stone-like face showing an expression Lisa had never seen before, fear mixed with wonder. "This is impossible. The precursor consciousness interfaces required a level of mental unity that no species has achieved since the precursors themselves vanished. How could a primitive human activate systems that our greatest scientists cannot even understand?" The answer came from an unexpected source. One of the Violin, an elderly female with skin that glowed like moonlight, stood up slowly. "Perhaps," she said in a voice soft as silk, "we have been thinking about this wrong for all these centuries. We have tried to understand the precursor technology with our minds, but what if it was meant to be understood with the heart?" Dr. Foster's voice crackled through the speakers again. "Lisa, the readings I'm getting are incredible. Your music didn't just create sound waves, it created harmonic resonances that matched the quantum frequencies of consciousness itself. You've somehow found the key to technology that's been lost for thousands of years." Lisa felt overwhelmed by all the attention and the strange things happening around her. She had come here just to play violin, to try to prove that humans could make beautiful music. She never expected to wake up ancient alien technology or to be the center of such a huge discovery. But as she looked around at the faces of the alien beings, she began to understand what was really happening. For centuries, they had been trying to recreate the achievements of the precursors through logic and science. They had built more and more complex machines, developed more and more advanced theories, but they had forgotten something simple and important. The precursors hadn't just been smart. They had been connected to each other in ways that went beyond thought. Their technology wasn't just advanced, it was alive, responding to the life force of conscious beings rather than cold commands. And somehow, humans had stumbled onto this same connection, not through advanced science or thousands of years of study, but through something they had always taken for granted: their ability to feel complex emotions and share them with others. The council master was studying the displays that still danced around the chamber. "Human Lisa Martinez," he said formally, "what you have accomplished here today changes everything we thought we knew about consciousness, about technology, about the nature of intelligence itself. But Elder Crix was not ready to accept what he was seeing. His glowing eyes narrowed as he stared at Lisa. "Accident," he growled. "This must be some kind of accident or coincidence. No young species could possess abilities that we elder races. I've spent eons trying to develop." "Then explain it," challenged Dr. Foster from the observation deck. "Explain how a human musician with no advanced technology, no quantum computers, no consciousness enhancers, managed to activate systems that your people couldn't even turn on with all your equipment." Elder Crix had no answer, and his silence filled the chamber like a heavy weight. The elderly Violin spoke again, her voice carrying the wisdom of many centuries. "I have lived for over 2,000 years, she said. "I have seen species rise and fall, watched civilizations build wonders, and then forget how they built them. And I have learned that sometimes the greatest discoveries come not from complexity, but from simplicity." She turned to look directly at Lisa. "Your species is young, yes. You have not had time to build the walls of logic and tradition that sometimes prevent older races from seeing simple truths. You play music with your heart rather than your head. You feel contradictory emotions without trying to resolve them. You connect with others naturally, without thinking about it." The Violin gestured to the light displays still flowing around them. "This is what the precursors understood. Technology is not separate from life. It is an extension of life. Their greatest achievements came not from building smarter machines, but from building machines that could feel." Lisa looked down at her violin, the simple wooden instrument that had belonged to her grandmother. "So you're saying that human music is special because we put our feelings into it?" "Not just your music," said the council master, his voice filled with new understanding. "Your entire approach to existence. You do not try to perfect yourselves by removing emotion. You embrace emotion as a source of strength. You do not see logic and feeling as opposites. You weave them together naturally." One of the Zephyrians clicked their mandibles in a pattern Lisa had learned meant deep thought. "This explains many things about human behavior that we found puzzling. Your willingness to take risks, your ability to adapt quickly to new situations, your tendency to form emotional bonds, even with beings very different from yourselves." Dr. Foster was typing rapidly on her portable computer, trying to record everything she was seeing. "The implications of this are staggering," she said. "If human consciousness naturally interfaces with precursor technology, it means we might be able to unlock secrets that have been lost for millennia. Ancient databases forgotten. Scientific discoveries, maybe even clues about what happened to the precursors themselves." But Lisa was thinking about something else entirely. She was thinking about her grandmother Elena, who had brought music to the cold, harsh environment of Mars Colony 7. She was thinking about all the human musicians, artists, and poets who had found ways to create beauty in the darkness of space. Maybe humans weren't special because they were smarter or stronger than other species. Maybe they were special because they had never forgotten how to feel, how to connect, how to find meaning in the simple act of sharing their inner lives with others. The testing chamber gradually returned to normal, the light displays fading as the ancient systems went back to sleep. But the atmosphere in the room had changed forever. Lisa could see it in the way the aliens looked at her, at each other, at the possibilities that had suddenly opened up before them. Elder Crix stood silent for a long moment, his glowing eyes fixed on Lisa. Finally, he spoke, and his voice held a grudging respect. "It seems," he said slowly, "that there is more to evaluate here than simple musical ability." 3 weeks after Lisa's performance at Kepler Station, the galaxy was buzzing with news that no one could have predicted. The recording of her fusion piece had been shared across thousands of worlds, and everywhere it played, something extraordinary happened. Species that had not created new art in centuries suddenly found themselves inspired to compose, to paint, to write poetry. On the crystal world of Zephyr Prime, young mantis-like beings who had spent their lives following ancient musical Formulas began experimenting with new melodies that expressed their own feelings instead of just copying their elders. On the silver seas of Vela, artists started painting with colors that showed emotion instead of just mathematical perfection. But not everyone was happy about these changes. Lisa sat in her quarters aboard the UE's Explorer, Captain Jake Sullivan's exploration vessel, reading reports from across the galaxy on her tablet. The news was both exciting and frightening. While many species were embracing the new creative movement, others were calling it dangerous and chaotic. The old ways are being forgotten, complained a Calorian cultural minister in one broadcast. Young beings are abandoning the wisdom of centuries to follow human emotional madness. Dr. Foster knocked on Lisa's door and entered without waiting for an answer. Her face was pale and worried. "Lisa, we need to talk. I've been monitoring communications from the hegemony. Elder Crix has been very busy since your performance." Lisa set down her tablet and looked up at the older woman. Dr. Foster had become like a second mother to her during the journey to Kepler Station, helping her understand alien cultures and prepare for the tests. "What kind of busy?" Lisa asked, though she had a feeling she didn't want to know the answer. "He's been traveling to different worlds, meeting with conservative leaders from various species. They're calling your music a consciousness virus that's infecting young minds and destroying traditional values." Dr. Foster sat down heavily in the chair across from Lisa. "There are reports of human artists and musicians being banned from certain systems. Some worlds are even jamming the broadcast of your performance." Lisa felt her stomach clench with worry. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I just wanted to play music." "I know," Dr. Foster said gently, "but what you've done is bigger than music now. You've shown the galaxy that there are other ways to think, other ways to create, other ways to connect with consciousness itself. That scares some people, especially those who have spent thousands of years believing their way was the only right way." Captain Sullivan's voice came through the ship's communication system. "All hands, we're receiving a priority message from Earth Command. Dr. Foster and Ms. Martinez, please report to the bridge immediately." They hurried through the ship's corridors to the bridge, where Captain Sullivan was studying a holographic display with a grim expression. The message was from Admiral Nicole Parker, the head of Earth's new Cultural Defense Initiative. "Captain Sullivan," the Admiral's image said, "we have a situation developing. Intelligence reports suggest that the hegemony is planning some kind of action to suppress what they're calling the human cultural contamination. We're not sure what form this will take, but we're taking no chances." The Admiral's image turned to look directly at Lisa. "Ms. Martinez, your performance has had effects far beyond what any of us anticipated. Entire star systems are reporting cultural revolutions inspired by your music. While this is wonderful, in many ways, it's also created a dangerous political situation." Lisa stepped forward. "What can I do to help?" "I never wanted to cause trouble for anyone." "That's just it," Admiral Parker replied. "You can't uncreate what you've already created. The galaxy has heard human music now, and there's no taking that back. But we can make sure you're safe while the political situation sorts itself out." Captain Sullivan crossed his arms. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" "We're establishing a protection detail for Ms. Martinez and the other human cultural ambassadors. Commander Ryan Cooper will be leading a team of ships to escort you back to Earth space. But first, there's something else we need Lisa to do." The Admiral's expression became more serious. "The Grand Convergence is being called. For the first time in 500 years, representatives from every known species will gather to discuss a galaxy-wide issue. That issue is humanity's place in galactic culture." Lisa felt dizzy. The Grand Convergence was something she had read about in history books. It was the ultimate political gathering, called only when something threatened the stability of the entire galaxy. "They want me to perform again?" she asked. "More than that," Admiral Parker said. "Elder Crix has challenged humanity to prove that our cultural influence is beneficial rather than destructive. The convergence would be a formal debate about whether humans should be allowed to continue sharing their artistic traditions with other species. Dr. Foster stepped forward. And if the convergence decides against us? The Admiral was quiet for a moment before answering. Then humanity could be banned from participating in galactic culture entirely. We would be restricted to our own star systems, cut off from the rest of civilization. Lisa sank into a nearby chair, overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility, suddenly placed on her shoulders. Everything she had worked for, everything her grandmother had dreamed of when she carried her violin to Mars, might be lost because of choices Lisa had made in a testing chamber 3 weeks ago. There's more, Admiral Parker continued. Intelligence suggests that Elder Crix has been gathering support from species that feel threatened by change. The vote at the convergence won't just be about music. It will be about whether the galaxy is ready to embrace new ways of thinking, or if it will choose to stay locked in ancient traditions. Captain Sullivan placed a hand on Lisa's shoulder. You don't have to do this alone, Lisa. Humanity stands behind you. But Lisa was thinking about something else. She was remembering the connection she had felt with all the different alien minds. During her performance, she had touched their loneliness, their fears, their hopes for something better. Maybe this wasn't really about her at all. Maybe it was about giving every being in the galaxy the chance to discover their own creative potential. When is the convergence? She asked. In 2 weeks, Admiral Parker replied. It's being held at the Nexus, the ancient meeting place at the center of the galaxy. Lisa, I want you to understand, this will be the most important performance of your life. The future of human civilization may depend on what happens there. Lisa stood up slowly, her mind made up. Then we'd better start preparing. But I want to do something different this time. I don't want to just perform for them. I want to perform with them. Dr. Foster looked confused. What do you mean? I mean that the best way to show them what human culture can offer is to help them discover their own creativity. I want to teach them that they don't have to choose between tradition and innovation. They can have both. Over the next few days, as the explorer traveled toward the Nexus, Lisa worked with Dr. Foster to develop a new kind of performance. Instead of playing a prepared piece, she would lead an improvised musical session where representatives from different species could participate. She would show them how human creativity worked by helping them experience it themselves. But even as she planned, reports continued to come in from across the galaxy. Some worlds were embracing the new artistic freedom with joy and excitement. Others were cracking down hard, arresting anyone caught creating art in the new style. Commander Cooper's protection fleet arrived to escort them, but Lisa barely noticed the additional ships. She was too busy worrying about what would happen. At the convergence, would Elder Crix try to sabotage her performance? Would the other species be willing to participate in her musical experiment? And most importantly, would she be able to prove that human creativity was a gift to the galaxy, rather than a threat? As they approached the Nexus, a massive space station that had been built by dozens of species working together over thousands of years, Lisa looked out at the gathering fleet of ships. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy were converging. On this single point in space in 2 days, she would face the greatest challenge of her life. The future of humanity's place in galactic civilization hung in the balance, and everything depended on her ability to make alien beings understand. That different didn't mean dangerous. It meant beautiful. The Grand Convergence Amphitheater was the largest space Lisa had ever seen. Built inside the Nexus station at the center of the galaxy, it could hold millions of beings from every known species. The ceiling was made of transparent metal that showed the swirling stars in the galactic core, and the walls pulsed with soft light that helped translate languages instantly for everyone present. Lisa stood on a small platform in the center of the vast space, surrounded by representatives from thousands of worlds. She had never felt so small or so important at the same time. Her violin case sat at her feet, and next to it was something new, a collection of simple instruments from different alien cultures that she had spent the last 2 weeks learning to play. Elder. Crix rose from his position among the hegemony delegates, his massive form casting shadows across half the amphitheater. His voice boomed through the space like thunder. Beings of the galaxy, we gather today to address a crisis that threatens the very foundation of our civilization. The humans, in their ignorance, have unleashed forces they do not understand. He gestured toward Lisa with one huge arm. This young creature claims to offer us gifts, but what has her influence brought? Chaos on peaceful worlds. Young beings, abandoning the wisdom of their elders. Ancient traditions being forgotten in favor of emotional outbursts disguised as art. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Lisa could see that many beings were nodding in agreement with Elder Crix's words. Her heart sank as she realized how difficult this was going to be. I propose, Elder Crix continued, that we ban all human cultural influence from our worlds. Let them keep their emotional music to themselves. The galaxy was stable and peaceful before they arrived, and it can be so again. The Council Master from Kepler Station stood up, his golden wings catching the light from the galactic core. Elder Crix speaks of stability, but perhaps stability is not always the same thing as life. I have witnessed what human creativity can accomplish. They have awakened technology that had slept for thousands of years. They have shown us new ways to think about consciousness itself. Exactly my point, Elder Crix replied. They meddle with things beyond their understanding. Who knows what dangers they might unleash next? Dr. Foster, sitting in the human delegation section, caught Lisa's eye and nodded encouragingly. They had planned for this moment, but Lisa still felt nervous about what she was going to do. Lisa stepped forward and spoke into the amplification field that would carry her voice to every corner of the amphitheater. Elder Crix, honored representatives, you're asking the wrong question. You're asking whether my music is dangerous or safe, whether human creativity is good or bad. But that's not what this is really about. The amphitheater fell silent. Even Elder Crix looked surprised that she had interrupted. The real question, Lisa continued, is whether you're willing to discover what you might create if you stop being afraid of feeling something new. She picked up her violin and a small Zephyrian crystal chime. I'm not here to perform for you today. I'm here to perform with you. I want to show you that creativity isn't about replacing old traditions. It's about building new ones together. Elder. Crix's eyes blazed brighter. You think a simple demonstration will change minds that have been made up over centuries? I think, Lisa said quietly, that you're all more creative than you remember. You've just forgotten how to let yourselves feel it. She began to play a simple melody on her violin, the same folk tune her grandmother had hummed on Mars. But this time, she left spaces in the music, gaps where other voices could join in. At first, nothing happened. The alien delegates sat in their seats, watching and waiting. But then, something magical began. A young Villani in the back row started humming, along with Lisa's melody, her voice adding a silver harmony that made the simple tune sparkle. One of the Zephyrian youth clicked their mandibles in rhythm, creating a percussion that fit perfectly with the song. Elder Crix scowled and gestured for silence, but more voices were joining in. An Altarian cloud of lights began to pulse in, patterns that matched the music's emotional flow. A group of Calorian youngsters spread their wings and created wind sounds that added depth to the melody. Lisa smiled and began to weave the different contributions together, her violin serving as a bridge between all the various sounds. She used the quantum harmony she had learned to help the different musical traditions blend without losing their individual characters. As the improvised symphony grew, something wonderful happened. The ancient precursor systems in the Nexus began to respond just as they had at Kepler Station. The walls lit up with patterns of light that danced to the rhythm of the music. Mathematical equations appeared in the air, showing how the different alien musical styles were related to each other at a deep level. But most importantly, Lisa could feel the barriers between species beginning to dissolve. Through the shared act of creation, beings who had never spoken to each other were suddenly communicating in the universal language of music and emotion. Elder Crix tried to restore order. Stop this madness. You are abandoning thousands of years of cultural development for the sake of a human child's game." But his voice was lost in the growing symphony. Even some of the older, more conservative delegates were beginning to participate. They weren't abandoning their traditions. They were discovering new ways to express them. An ancient Karolina elder, one of the most respected beings in the galaxy, stood up and began to sing in a voice that was deep and rich as mountain rivers. The song was in the oldest Karolina language, a chant that told the story of their people's first flight among the stars. But the way he sang it, with rhythm and melody inspired by Lisa's human folk tune, made it feel both ancient and completely new. The music built and built, with more and more beings joining in. Lisa realized that she wasn't leading the performance anymore. It was leading itself, growing into something that no single species could have created alone. The climax came when Elder Crix himself, despite his anger and resistance, began to glow with a soft light that pulsed in time with the music. His species communicated through energy patterns, and even his body was responding to the shared emotional experience. When the music finally ended, the amphitheater was transformed. The light displays gradually faded, but the connections between the different beings remained. Lisa could see it in their faces, in the way they looked at each other with new understanding and respect. The council master spoke first, his voice filled with wonder. "I have lived for over 1,000 years, and I have never experienced anything like that. We were not performing human music or alien music. We were performing our music, all of us together." A vote was called, but it was really just a formality. The representatives had already made their decision through participation rather than argument. Humanity would not only be welcome in galactic culture, they would be invited to help other species rediscover their own creative potential. Elder Crix stood alone among his supporters, most of whom had joined the musical experience despite their earlier objections. He looked at Lisa with an expression that was no longer hostile, just sad and confused. "How?" he asked simply. "How did you know this would work?" Lisa thought about her grandmother Elena, about all the musicians throughout human history who had brought people together through shared songs. "Because that's what music does," she said. "It reminds us that underneath all our differences, we all have hearts that can feel the same joys and sorrows. We all want to create something beautiful and share it with others." As the representatives began to leave the amphitheater, many of them stopped to speak with Lisa. They wanted to learn more about human musical traditions, to share their own artistic heritage, to explore what new forms of beauty they might create together. The question, "How good is she really?" had finally been answered. But the answer wasn't about Lisa's skill with a violin or her ability to understand alien music. The answer was that she was good enough to help an entire galaxy remember something they had almost forgotten, that the best art comes not from perfection, but from the courage to share your heart with others, no matter how different they might seem. Later, as Lisa packed her violin for the journey home to Earth, she smiled thinking about all the letters and messages she had already received from young beings across the galaxy who wanted to learn human music. The real work was just beginning, but she was ready for it. After all, she had a lot of hearts to teach how to sing.